The early afternoon sun cast long shadows across a modest neighborhood park. It was the kind of place where families usually gathered for a lazy Saturday. A couple of kids on the swings, a few teens shooting hoops. On this particular day, Donald Trump chose to walk here quietly, hoping to escape his usual whirlwind schedule. He wore a simple suit jacket over a plain shirt, appearing more low-key than the headlines typically portrayed him. Strolling down the paved pathway, he noticed a small boy, maybe 10 or 11, sitting alone on a bench, knees pulled to his chest. The boy looked unsettled, staring at the ground as if it held all his fears. Trump paused nearby, sensing something off. This child's slumped posture spoke of more than mere sadness. Glancing around, he realized there were no adults watching him from a distance, no friends coming over to talk. It felt odd. Trump, drawn by paternal concern, stepped a bit closer. He heard a shaky sniffle, saw the boy's trembling hands clench at the fabric of his jeans. Before he could talk himself out of it, he approached. He greeted the boy gently, asking if everything was okay. The child lifted his face, light bruising around one eye, a hint of fear in his gaze. He swallowed nervously but managed a shaky answer, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm fine. Yet, Trump knew well enough from business and personal encounters when someone wasn't telling the truth. This was definitely more than a passing issue. The boy, whose name was Adam, reluctantly admitted he'd run away for the afternoon because home didn't feel safe. Normally, Donald Trump might have called a security detail or local authorities, but something about Adam's earnest, scared expression stopped him. He settled on the bench, giving Adam room to breathe, and asked him to share only what he felt comfortable telling. Over the soft hum of a distant lawnmower, Adam let out fragments of a story. About a father who lost his temper too easily. About arguments escalating into slaps and shoves. A mother, unsure how to intervene, often too frightened herself to stop it. Trump listened with a heaviness in his chest. Family conflict and child abuse were not topics he'd personally encountered so intimately. Yet here was a real child, bruised inside and out. He realized Adam wasn't seeking pity, he was seeking safety. Without wanting to alarm the boy further, Trump offered a calm reassurance, telling Adam that no child should endure harm at home. There had to be a solution. Adam blinked back tears, uncertain if he could trust a stranger, let alone one the media portrayed so boldly. But desperation outweighed his fears. After a pause, Trump asked whether there was any relative or neighbor Adam could trust. A teacher or a counselor at school, perhaps. Adam only shook his head, tears slipping from his reddened eyes. He muttered something about how his parents used to be loving, but money troubles and anger had turned the house into a battleground. Tucking trembling hands beneath his legs, Adam whispered he never meant to cause trouble. He just wanted the yelling and hitting to stop. Over the next few minutes, Trump gently coaxed more of the story out. Adam's father, David, had lost a stable job some months ago. Bills piled up, tension escalated, and David's frustration spilled over violently onto Adam and sometimes onto Adam's mother, Michelle. The boy's timid voice wavered. He didn't want his father arrested, just helped. He loved them both, but each day felt more dangerous. Trump felt a rush of protective instinct. He assured Adam that professional assistance, counselors, social workers, existed for families in crisis, for parents who lashed out but might still be reachable through therapy. Adam trembled, torn between relief and worry. No parent liked being confronted or forced into counseling. Still, what else could be done? With resolve, Trump said he would help, discreetly, carefully, making sure Adam stayed safe. Rising from the bench, he placed a reassuring hand on Adam's shoulder and guided him toward the park's main exit, promising to find a temporary place or person Adam could trust. at least for tonight. Outside the park, Trump phoned a trusted contact, someone used to private philanthropic endeavors. He asked them to arrange a quiet meeting with a child welfare volunteer. Within an hour, a gentle-faced woman named Linda arrived at a nearby cafe. Adam clung to Trump's side, still unsure if any grown-up would truly help. But Linda's warm smile and calm questions soothed him somewhat. She explained that first they'd make sure Adam wasn't returning to immediate danger. Then they'd see about involving a family counselor. Adam's biggest concern: if his father found out he told outsiders, would the violence worsen? Linda, experienced in these delicate situations, said she'd contact the local family services unit discreetly. The goal wasn't to tear the family apart, but to intervene so the father could get help, and the mother, Michelle, wasn't left helpless. Trump nodded, relieved that a real plan was forming. By the time they parted ways that evening, Adam was placed under Linda's short-term care, while arrangements were made to bring both parents in for a mediated session. Over the following days, Trump kept in touch with Linda. She updated him on the progress. David, confronted by the possibility of losing Adam entirely, reluctantly agreed to attend a mandated therapy program. Michelle, tearful and exhausted, found a glimmer of hope that maybe her husband could regain self-control. Meanwhile, Adam stayed with Linda temporarily, learning that home didn't have to mean fear. But David's pride flared. He blamed external stress, the economy, foolish therapy sessions. Linda reported to Trump that the father was on the verge of storming out of the second session. Fearing a relapse of anger, she requested Trump's presence. Sometimes having a prominent figure around lent extra gravity to the situation. Trump hesitated. He didn't want to overshadow the therapy process. Yet, for Adam's safety, he agreed to show up quietly. At the counseling center, he observed from an adjoining room as Michelle pleaded with David to accept the help. The counselor, calm but firm, pointed out how the violence was illegal and damaging. Adam, seated with Linda, tried not to tremble. David's voice rose, fists clenched. Then, at the last moment, he spotted Trump's silent figure. Realizing the seriousness, David deflated, mumbling he'd continue therapy to keep his family intact. Days passed. The counselor scheduled multiple family sessions. At first, David was defensive, accusing others of meddling, but glimpses of progress emerged. He admitted losing his job made him feel powerless and shamed, that hurting his child only deepened his guilt. Michelle, relieved to be heard, shared her own fears of walking on eggshells. Through it all, Adam watched with cautious hope. Trump kept his role minimal, supporting Linda's efforts behind the scenes. He made sure financial constraints weren't a barrier by covering therapy costs discreetly. Meanwhile, child welfare authorities kept a watchful eye, ready to intervene if David relapsed into violence. Linda updated Trump regularly. David continued therapy sessions, sometimes storming out halfway but returning next time, gradually adjusting to the counselor's methods. Michelle began learning de-escalation tactics, how to recognize triggers and set boundaries. She enrolled in a support group for parents experiencing domestic stress. Adam, in a safer environment, found his voice. No longer cowering in corners, he shared how each argument felt like the end of the world. Tension still loomed, but rays of understanding started to break through the clouds. After a month of consistent therapy, David's violent outbursts had diminished drastically. He still needed to address underlying anger issues, but for the first time, he expressed genuine remorse to Adam and Michelle. The counselor recommended a structured plan, regular check-ins, continuous anger management courses, and possibly job placement assistance to reduce financial strain. It wasn't a magical fix. Healing required time and commitment. But the immediate crisis, physical abuse, subsided. One mild evening, Linda arranged a small family progress session, to mark a milestone in their therapy. Trump, still curious but wanting to maintain a low profile, arrived quietly. In a modest, pale yellow counseling room, Adam sat between his parents, who both looked emotionally spent but more united than before. Michelle reached for Adam's hand. David, blinking back tears, apologized with a sincerity that left the room hushed. Adam sniffled, wrapping his arms around his father's shoulders. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a step away from violence toward respect and care. As the session concluded, the counselor praised David for persevering, not quitting therapy despite initial resistance. She also commended Michelle for advocating for Adam's safety. The child welfare staff, satisfied with the family's engagement, decided ongoing support was enough. No drastic removal needed as long as David continued on this path. Outside, the evening breeze felt lighter. Adam, spotting Trump near the doorway, rushed over. He thanked him in a halting voice, still shy but no longer trembling with fear. Michelle approached too, expressing tearful gratitude. "I never wanted to involve anyone," she said softly, "but we needed that push." "Thank you." David stood off to the side, eyes downcast, but mustered a quiet nod of respect toward Trump. Trump gently reminded them, "Your real work is ahead, keeping the peace, building trust, supporting each other. Therapy is just the beginning." David swallowed, acknowledging the truth. They parted with a sense of cautious optimism. The next morning, Linda called Trump, sharing a final update. David had secured a part-time job interview. Michelle planned to sign up for additional counseling to handle her trauma. Adam would stay in therapy a bit longer, learning confidence and boundary setting. "They might actually make it," Linda said, relief coloring her tone. Trump felt a warm wave of satisfaction. The boy who once cowered in the park now had a chance at a safer home. Trump never sought media coverage for this. In the public's eye, it was just another quiet day. But for Adam and his parents, it was a turning point. Over the course of a few intense weeks, a dangerous cycle of violence began shifting into a fragile, hopeful journey of healing. Trump simply told Linda he was grateful for people like her, professionals dedicated to family welfare, then returned to his usual responsibilities, carrying the memory of Adam's timid smile and the family's new path forward. In a closing reflection, Trump wandered back to that same park a few weeks later, scanning the benches. Adam wasn't there. He was at home or in school, living a life that no longer revolved around fear. Trump realized that sometimes stepping into someone else's crisis, while daunting, could be the difference between despair and a second chance. For all the headlines about power and politics, it was this quiet act of helping a boy and his family find therapy that truly reminded him. Behind every conflict is a family needing compassion, behind every outburst an unresolved pain, and behind every child a future worth protecting. No child deserves to face fear at home. Let's remember that the path to change sometimes begins with a single conversation and the courage to seek help.